Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Four Female Founders podcast series, where we're helping women in business learn to thrive, not just survive. I am your host, Sarah Bundy, and today we have a really wonderful guest with us. Her name is Pauline Longdon, and she's one of the most recognized and in-demand copywriters in the world. She's published multiple books and has her very own business called the Copy Alchemist. Pauline, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's awesome to be here and having a chat to you today.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you being here for a few different reasons. One of them is that the very first book that you wrote was actually about a life story, something that happened to you, which was very dramatic, very drastic. And I love this story so much. I would love for you to share this story. It is around overcoming one of the most challenging obstacles I've ever heard, and around mental health and mental health wellness. I think it's really important that entrepreneurs think about their peers and their colleagues and even their own mental health. And so we would love to hear your story and talk a little bit about how you've overcome some of the challenges that you have and some of the things that we need to watch out for when it comes to looking out for our own mental states and the ability to support the people around us. So,
For
Pauline, please
sure.
tell us a little bit about your book and your background so we
Yes.
understand what you've gone through.
Yeah. So I wrote a book, and it's called "From Depression's Darkness to the Light of Life," and it's my personal journey traveling through depression, like from the depths of the darkness to the light of life again, and being able to re-engage in life and also being successful again. But I mean, the story started quite a long time ago, back in 2003. I was in the Australian Army. I was a nursing officer. I was a captain at the time, and I got sent on operations overseas. You know, that's basically what I'd been training for my whole life. I was very much a humanitarian. I wanted to make a difference in the impact in the world. So I got what I wished for, but I got too much of what I wished for, and I got sent on back-to-back deployments, and that just really just burnt me out. There was a bit of, not to go down the rabbit hole too far, but there was a whole heap of bullying in an already stressful situation, and I held it together until I got back home, and that's when my world started to fall apart. I didn't realize that I had like a high functioning depression whilst I was on deployment, but that hit me when I got back to my regular life, back home with my partner, my cat, everything like that. And I just realized, wow, I'm not actually happy. So I went through the motions of like being diagnosed, given antidepressants and all that sort of stuff, complying with the military's like model of like treatment for depression. And then, oh, by the way, I got the irony of the story was that I got promoted to major, the rank of major, and then I was diagnosed like a couple of weeks later with major depression. And I remember saying at the time, hey, can I get a demotion so I can get a lesser depression? Because that'd probably be easier to deal with. And they went, that's not funny. And I went, no, it's not actually. And at the time, like everyone knew everything was going wrong for me because I had no sense of humor. Like I loved to laugh at everything, but I was not laughing then. So anyway, I just went through the motions, and then an unfortunate incident of like too much medication. I ended up with serotonin syndrome, which is where you got more serotonin in your blood than blood. And I went on this like trippy kind of experience, and I just decided enough's enough. But I wasn't trained for anything other than being like a registered nurse, and they'd basically taken that away from me, said I'd never nurse again. It was just really horrible. So I took discharge very reluctantly, because I had a plan B. And that plan B was on my discharge day, I picked out a tree and I was going to drive my car as fast as I could into it. And my car, unfortunately, whatever way you look at it, didn't have airbags. So it would have been pretty like successful. But as I was, like speeding towards a tree, and I do not know what happened. It was almost like just a voice screamed out of the blue. No one else in the car with me, so it's quite woo woo. Stop the effing car. And so I just like brakes on and stopped just in time. So that's, that was like a wake up call for me. And also because I was a trauma nurse, I had nurse people who had failed at doing a good job at escaping, planet Earth. So then I just sat there and I went, yeah, I was going to really muck that up. I probably would have been a vegetable for the rest of my life, and that's horrible. Because actually, like, I'm not saying that suicide is a good thing to do, but the reason I wanted to do it was to take the load, the emotional load of my parents, my family, my partner, because they were all mourning me while I was alive. They were mourning the loss of who I was, this dynamic, strong woman that was like had a successful army career. I was heading for like the top of my rank structure. I was very ambitious, and they were mourning the loss of that woman. So then it was like if I stuffed up my death and became a vegetable, then I was extending that burden anyway. So I just went, let's just not do it. So then it's like, well, what do I do? And because they took nursing away from me, I thought, like all entrepreneurs were crazy. Hey, I think I'll become an entrepreneur. I'm going to have a business. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. It's like, let's do that. I don't want to have a job. Anyway, so that was like 10 years in the wilderness trying to find where I belonged. And anyway, lots of failures, a couple of successes. And then some of that led me towards writing, like becoming a copywriter. But the irony was the day that I was discharged from the army, I had signed my paperwork with a shaky X because I couldn't read or write. I couldn't even read the paperwork that they were making me sign, and I couldn't even remember how to spell my name. That's the really abridged version of like going from a functionally illiterate loser to someone who actually gets paid to write and read for a living. It's crazy to think of how far I've actually come.
Thanks to CJ for sponsoring this episode of the For Female Founders podcast series and for supporting our mission to help, mentor, and elevate women in business. It's an amazing story, and to fill in some of the blanks for people who don't yet know you, you have become one of the most recognized and in-demand copywriters in the world. And
Yeah.
the book that you wrote, which was really an incredible feat, knowing that you couldn't even spell or sign your name. You created a lot of the communication of what it felt like to go through depression and your journey through pictures.
Yeah, I just would not speak. I would go for weeks without speaking. I just didn't know how to put words together. So I actually started to do these little doodles of a female, like a little girl, in all of these different scenarios. And then those pictures that I drew then became like pictures in the book. And the book actually took me a long time to write because I did I actually illustrated the book. That's why it's not so great. I'm no illustrator, but the pictures are pretty much what I drew to communicate how I felt on a particular day. Like my psychologist, how are you feeling today? I wouldn't use words. I just like draw this little picture. And by the way, like the pictures in the book are like normal book size, but when I'm in depression and I'm doing that, I felt so insignificant, so small. Like I was just an oxygen thief and I didn't matter to anyone. And so the photos were like, I don't know, you guys use inches, but like they were probably like less than a centimeter. So that's like, I don't know, quarter of an inch big, like they were tiny. Um, Yet that was how I actually expressed myself. And it was funny because my psychologist would just sit there and go, "Holy hell! Like these are so expressive, but without. How are you doing this?" And I don't know how I was doing. It's just like a channel of communication for me.
One of the things I love about listening to you talk about this is that you're so honest about it and you're so open and you're so raw about how you could communicate, how you could express yourself. And a lot of people can't talk about the challenge that is depression, that is mass, continuous, nonstop anxiety, that is mental health challenges, that is suicide. And I don't think a lot of people recognize when that is happening with a person. They don't
Yeah.
understand necessarily the pain that someone is going through. Interestingly enough, last night I actually attended a talk. I was listening to one of my best friends in the world who is a stage 4 tongue cancer survivor speak on stage in front of a room full of people. 9 years ago, when she was diagnosed with stage 4 tongue cancer, they actually cut open her whole face, cut out her tongue, removed a bunch of her teeth. She lost some of her jaw. She was told she was never going to live. And even if she did live, she'd survive off of a feeding tube. She would never speak again. She would never eat again. And here she is last night speaking on stage to a room full of people, listening to
Wow.
her story. Yeah, they rebuilt her tongue out of her arm muscle. She spent months and years in speech therapy to learn how to use a new tongue built out of her arm. And
Mm,
in her case, like her scars were visual on her face. And when you listen to her speak, she has a speech impediment now. Um, but the whole purpose of this entire session, there were 5 speakers last night, and they were talking about the invisible pains that people go through, whether it's depression, anxiety, epilepsy, chronic pain like arthritis, right? So I think it's really important for us as women, as well as people who are running businesses, to talk about these things, because I think it's more common than we really understand. And when our colleagues, our family members, or even ourselves are hitting this point of mental health where we don't know how to get over these humps, or we don't know how to get out of it, we have to be able to ask for help. And we have to
yeah.
sometimes be the ones to recognize when someone needs help. So in your
Yeah.
case, Pauline, can you tell us a little bit about what do we need to know about depression? What do we need to know about identifying when someone might need help?
So it's really difficult to tell because I mean, and this is hard for me to say, but the day that I was being discharged, like my partner knew I was being discharged. They were also in the army, but they didn't know that I tried to kill myself until several years later when I did a speaker training, and they said, "Hey, why don't you just tell the like most painful story you've ever gone through?" And my partner's sitting in the audience, and I just went, "Hey, well, there's this one day that I tried to drive into a tree, blah blah blah," and everyone just like looked at me, looked at her, looked at me, looked at her. It's like, and she's just like going, "What?" So then that was like huge. The thing was though, Sarah, is I was a high functioning depressive. Like I hid it. I was wearing a mask, and so I don't know how. Like I guess actually, I think if people weren't quite so busy around me, but then also the kind of the people that tried to help me were the most judgmental as well. It's like so they'd say things like, "Why can't you just be happy?" You know what? Happiness and depression are not even on the same spectrum. I believe that depression is caused from overwhelm, overwhelmed with everything. Like you have like a plate and there is way too much stuff on it and you do not even know where to start, and it just like people just keep piling and piling. So I probably look at those kind of things. If someone's in a high pressure job, you know, that they seem to be, they're kind of like the ducks on the pond. They make it look graceful that they're just like floating on water, but underneath like their legs are going like so fast it's not funny. So I just, you know, maybe it is, you know, they've got that "Are you okay" day. Um, it's like just don't wait for a specific day to ask if people are okay because you will miss it. But what about just checking in on people and just having those real conversations? It's like, you know, when this is so funny because like talking to women about women, it's like if you say to your girlfriend, you go, "How are you today?" and she goes, "Oh, I'm fine." That is the biggest red flag because women, when we say that we are fine, we are far from it. We are anything other than fine. So it's like just learning, or just not learning, just getting to read the room and read people around you and just go, "But are you?" Like if they're really quick to respond, like, "How are you today?" Like, "I'm great." Uh, that was a little too fast. You know, that's a very like automatic response. So, but also from the perspective of the person who is depressed, you know, asking for help can be very difficult. Like I was wearing a mask because I was so stoic. You need to ask for help. I know that I didn't have to get to the point where I just wanted to jump off the planet and by driving into a tree, but I don't know. I just didn't feel that I wanted to burden other people. But then when I talked to the people that, could have helped me, I was never a burden, never a bother. That was my own story. So the thing that I'd really love to share with the world about depression is like a lying, cheating idiot. Because like it tells us all the same shitty story. It tells us that you're worthless, that you don't deserve to be here, no one will notice when you've gone, and all that sort of stuff. So if you have depression, don't listen to it because it's like so unoriginal and so non-creative. It's just telling us all the same story. That's why I say it cheats on us, because it's like if someone else is depressed, it's over there telling them the same stories it's telling you. It's like, so what I started to do, I started to divorce depression, not try to beat depression, because that's very masculine, like let's obliterate, let's annihilate, and all that sort of stuff. And I just went, no, I'm divorcing you. You're out. You've got no more access to me in my mind. I started to not own things anymore. So I didn't have my medication, my psychiatrist, it was like the depression, the medication, the psychiatrist, I started to externalize things instead of bringing them in and owning them inside me. And that's what really started to make a big difference for me, was not owning it anymore.
It's amazing once you can treat it like an object. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's invading your life and invading your space versus using it to define you and sort of take over your mind. Not a
Yeah.
lot of people know this about me, and I actually want to talk a little bit about how to overcome some of these challenges too. And I love that you shared, that you've tried different tools, that you have, as a counselor, psychiatrist, that you've been able to talk to. I am a huge advocate of counseling. I'm a massive fan of, please go talk to a professional. If you have a therapist, please don't hide it. I think we need to actually be okay with the fact that there are professionals out there for our mental state. You might go see like a chiropractor for your back, or like a doctor
Yeah.
for when you hurt yourself. You'll go see a surgeon if you need surgery. It is totally okay to go see a professional if you need some help with your mental well-being as well. That's what they're there for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the story I want to tell, which a lot of people don't know about me, is that when I was younger, I had a very severe case of PTSD from my childhood, and I ended up having multiple panic attacks a day in my early 20s. I moved out of the house. I was sort of solo, independent. A few things happened, and one day I might tell the story over a podcast where we can elaborate a little further. But a few things happened, and I stopped going to work. I was so terrified to leave my house that I actually developed a case of agoraphobia, which is actually a
Wow.
fear of leaving your house, because I was so scared that if something were to happen to me in public, people would stare, people would laugh, people would walk over my body, people would do nothing to help me. And I'd be in this state of such humiliation and desperate need for support, and nobody would help me. And that actually stemmed off of the back of something that actually happened to me in real life, which was when I was 16 years old. I actually fainted on a train, and I woke up 3 stations later with literally people staring and laughing and people walking over my body to get on and off the train. And nobody helped me. It was a full train. It was standing room only. And I remember waking up at 16 years old, and I had spilled my iced tea on myself. I tried to open an iced tea because I felt myself about to faint. Opened the iced tea, fainted, spilled all over me. I'm lying on the floor all like sticky and wet. And basically a circle. Everyone took about 3, 4 steps back, and there was just like a circle around me, and everyone crowded together as they left me in a big circle on the floor in my like pool of iced tea. And I remember this lady, the last lady who got on the third stop, and she kind of looked at me and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I couldn't speak. I had no energy to sit up. I literally just shook my head no. I couldn't say anything. I was like, "No, I'm not okay." And she pushed the emergency button and she said, "We need an ambulance here. Somebody come and help this person." And I remember her helping me get up. And then she turned and she looked at everybody on the train and she's like, "Shame on you. Shame on you." And she like yelled at everybody and told them all off. And I was like, "This lady's amazing." And then she ended up actually going to my work to tell my manager that I wasn't going to make it because of what happened. So fast forward a few years later, I started having and a few more events that kind of triggered this like agoraphobia. I
Mm.
wouldn't leave my house. I couldn't speak in front of people. I couldn't talk on stage. I couldn't go to events. I couldn't even drive in my car to go to the doctor. So, I've been in this state of like mental health annihilation and
Mm.
such a block that you can't function. And I remember lying there after probably like my 15th panic attack this one day, sitting in the dark in my bed in my room. And I was like, I can't let this be my life. Like I was 23 years old, 24 years old. I was like, I don't want this to be my future. So I found the strength to drive to a counselor, a psychiatrist, oh, excuse me, a psychologist, actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
and did some cognitive behavioral therapy, which was a huge help for me. He helped me get over my agoraphobia. He helped me get over my panic attacks. And one of the things that was extremely helpful for me, and the reason I'm telling this story is because I think tools are really important. Two things. One, I don't want having to talk to a professional to be a stigma. I don't want that to be a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing. I don't want
Yeah.
people to think that if they're having a hard time mentally, they can't talk about it and they can't go get help, right? But I want to leave a tip because something that he told me was so helpful. And to this day, I remember it and I use it if I need to, and I'll tell other people that I need to. Your mind carries so much emotion and thoughts firing at you all of the time. When you're in a state of depression or you're in a state of panic, in the case of panic attacks, it's your brain compounding a story, a narrative,
Mm.
right? So he said to me, I want you to go to the store and I want you to buy 2 journals. In the first journal, I want you to write down what you're grateful for and anything positive that you could possibly think of about your life or even about your day. And in the other journal, I want you to write down everything that's bothering you, every fear you have, why you're angry, what you're afraid of, what you doubt about yourself. Get it out of your head and get it into a book. And then later, if you want to burn that book, if you want to bury that book, if you want to go back and reread what you wrote to yourself because for some reason you want to repeat it again to yourself, you can do that, but get it out of your head. The
Yep.
fact that we could separate those two things as well, where positivity got to live in this one book and negativity lived in a different book, what I found over time was that my pages and pages of fears became shorter and shorter and shorter each time. And my pages and pages of positivity and gratitude and excitement for life got longer and longer and longer each time.
That's so
And
awesome.
eventually it helped shift my mindset to the point where I didn't have a panic attack ever again. And now I go around the world and keynote on massive stages in front of very large crowds, and I'm not afraid. So being able to shift your mindset is key. And
Yeah.
that was a tip that I got from him that I like to share with other people when it's helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Because I mean, even to this day, I still have a high level mindset mentor because I know the value of nailing that mindset and that self talk is so important. Another thing that I did, I love because I wanted also I love tools and like processes that people can do. One of the things that I actually did was I became very aware of like the power of words through like metaphysics and all that sort of stuff that I do. And then it was like whatever you say after the words I am, you own, whether they be positive or negative. Your subconscious mind doesn't actually know positive or negative. It just goes, oh yeah, cool. It just gets it in there, sucks it in like a straw. So then I became aware of like stop saying things like I am depressed. Like I divorced the my's, but also got rid of the I am's as well. And that actually helped a lot because whatever you say after I am is yours to keep. And it's like, wow. Because something I didn't share as well was I because I had that really bad reaction to the medication. That was the last day that I had medication. So that was back in 2004, 2005. So I actually had to recover without medication. So what happened was that the military just like dropped me like a hot potato and said, okay, have a good life as a civilian. I hadn't been a civilian for like 14 years. I didn't know how to even do that. And also, when you're in the military, a lot of people don't understand that you are part of a huge community. Like, like-minded people. That's why you're in the military. So I lost my community, I lost my purpose, I lost my profession and everything. And then I had to like find ways to recover without medication because I it gave me anxiety about having to go back on any kind of medication because I lost all trust in the doctors because when I had serotonin syndrome, they tried to cover it up and say that I had the flu. It's like I've never had a flu where I hear sound through my skin. I can't I can't imagine having a flu that makes you see the world and you can, the flickering fluorescent lights. I could like take the pulse of the world and tell you how many times they flicker every second or every minute. It was just such a weird reality. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not demonizing medication. It works, and it gave me the brain break that I needed to sort some stuff out. But there's also like, never ever, like, if you don't want to do medication, don't think that that's the only way to do it. CBT, psychologists, counseling, just find what works for you. you know and there shouldn't be any stigma associated with any of them. Like, I've had people say to me, oh, you know I'm so embarrassed to say that I'm on medication for depression. I go, why are you embarrassed about it? Is it working? Yes. That's awesome. That's what we want. We just want to keep the darkness at bay. We don't want the darkness to win. That's it, you know?
That's right. And even just get you ahead enough that it gives you enough space in
Yeah.
your mind that you can
Yeah.
start to put positive things in and functional things in and a new path forward.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes, I mean, when I was in the military, like any military campaign, you need to like regroup and rest every now and then. You're not just fighting machines 24/7 and, just going off full force and, as we would say, up the guts with plenty of smoke, bang, 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 bang. We're not on a Hollywood movie where you've got like, I don't know, an endless supply of bullets, like you run out of bullets, you run out of energy. Like, that's the same with life. We run out of, you know energy. We run out of, like, what we're doing. So just give yourself that break and take a rest. And one of the biggest things that I learned, which helped me the most, just freaking breathe. Just take a
Breathing.
moment. Breathing is so good. It's like I hadn't been breathing, and whenever I was in pain and like the depression and that, I would actually, I wasn't cognizant of this, but I would actually just stop breathing. I would hold my breath. It's crazy, but yeah, it's just that response.
I've been there too. And actually, part of the reason why, one of the things I came to realize that would actually instigate my panic attacks was not breathing, holding my
Yeah.
breath. I didn't realize I would hold my breath as the same thing. And then it would sort of
Mm.
spiral into my body feels weird. And then I'd freak out. And then it would turn into a panic attack. So I totally get it. There's some amazing different strategies and teachers actually on YouTube that teach how to do things like box breathing and breathing before presentations and how to
Mhm.
stabilize your nervous system. So if you guys are finding, whoever's listening, that you need some support on breathing strategies, highly recommend that. That's one of the best possible ways to actually manage mental health. So that's a great suggestion, Pauline. Thank you very much for that one. What are some of the other things that you recommend? I know exercise is super important.
Yeah, exercise is a funny one because it's like everyone says, yeah, get out and exercise. It's like, I don't want to even be alive at the moment. Like, exercising is so difficult. And one of the things that I recognize, and I really like look back and I celebrate that woman who, just kept showing up despite not wanting to be alive. And although I didn't want to kill myself after I got to a certain point, but I still wasn't engaged in life. And it's like, people would say, just get out and exercise, just move. And I go, it's so difficult. Like, so what I would say is, like, we all know that exercise is important, but what I would say is find something that works for you. We're not talking about going for a run. I'm not talking about like doing a fit, workout. I'm not talking about that stuff, but it's just find what works for you that keeps you engaged in life. You start to get that enjoyment back in life, and don't expect that you're gonna like love it as soon as you do it. It's like, it's just small incremental steps. It's so important. So yeah, a movement in some way. Find a hobby or something. What I did, I actually this is crazy, I planted a garden. So And now, like, I planted like palm trees in, because I live in Brisbane in Australia, which is kind of like a Florida kind of version. So we've got tropical kind of like gardens and things like that. So the palms were only like, not all that tall, a couple of feet tall when I planted them. Now they're actually taller than my 2-story house.
Wow.
Um, and I look at that and I just go, I planted that garden not knowing that I'd ever get to see it to be this. But somewhere in my mind, I just went, just do something that in the future you can look back and go, hey, depressed Pauline, thank you so much for doing this, because now I've got the shade in my garden. I get these crazy birds because I'm in Australia, like everything's weird down here. But I get all these like great big white cockatoos come into my yard and everything like that. And I just look at the richness of my life that I actually couldn't see that back when I had the depression, but now I'm actually reaping the rewards of just those little things that I did just to keep moving, keep showing up the best I could at the time was just enough, like don't make don't think you have to do any great big grandiose like, okay, so let's get back on that horse and that. And don't be afraid of like failing as well. Like in business, we fail all the time. Come on, let's be honest, sometimes things just do not work out the way we want them. Just pick yourself up, dust yourself off. And like when I look at my life, I go, you know, nothing was as bad as wanting to and trying to drive into that tree. And also the other thing is a mindset thing that I do, Sarah, is that I I celebrate bonus days and bonus people. So if I wanted to check out on that day in September 2005, everything after that is a bonus. I've had bonus birthdays. I've got a bonus niece that I absolutely love. I I couldn't have imagined it at that time when I was in the depths of despair that I would actually get to, like you, travel world, speak on stages all around the world about copywriting. I didn't even know what copywriting was back in 2005. I had no idea. Um, Friends with some of the best people on the planet in my industry. I've had opportunities that people only dream about. It's just like, just have faith, have trust in the process, but keep moving and set yourself really good goals. Like, if I wasn't going to be like the head of the nursing corps in the army, which was the highest I could get, I can do that elsewhere. And there's no accidents that I'm where I am in copywriting as well. I just transferred that ambition into something else that wasn't going to be as empty as it felt at that time.
I think having something to look forward to and strive towards
Yeah.
is one of the most important things that we can do as human beings.
Yeah.
And taking the moments to appreciate the beauty of the bonuses, as you say.
Yeah.
And you know what? One of the reasons why we're having this conversation today, and I know this is a female founders podcast, and we're talking to entrepreneurs out there, and we're talking to business executives out there, and we're talking to aspirational leaders out there. This is a real thing. Like this is something, somebody, whoever's listening to this, someone today who is probably
Yep.
going through something similar, whether it's the high anxiety panic attacks and they're hiding it, whether it's the depression and they're hiding it, whether it's severe loneliness, just this
Mm-hmm.
like empty chasm of like despair. Maybe it's not depression, but it's like a loneliness that is so painful that they don't even know what to do with. There's somebody in your life right now who's going through something. And I think
Yep.
it's really important for us to be aware of those things, to your point, check in on people and just be like, how are you? And, building and maintaining really strong relationships with the people that you work with, whether that's your team, your vendors, your colleagues, your business partners. It's important to pay attention and kind of have that ear and that heart to be there for them. And when you can do that, especially when you're the leader of an organization, that's one of the things that creates a wonderful culture and camaraderie and engaged team members and people who will stay. You can have higher retention rates just because you care that much and you're
Yep.
available. You're emotionally available for your people.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really important that we talk about this because as women, especially, but entrepreneurs, we don't tend to stop and we don't tend to take care of ourselves. We take care of everybody else, right? And it's
Yeah.
really important that we don't overwhelm ourselves to the point where we are burning out and we are crashing and burning. So if you're somebody listening to this today and you feel like you need a break, please take a break. If you feel like you need to talk to somebody, please talk to somebody.
Hmm.
There's an amazing community out there that care, and we're here for you, right? There's a lot of people who've gone through really difficult things, and we can empathize and we can help if you feel like it. You need a path forward and you need somebody to give you some hope and an ear. We are here, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need to help each other. And I love what you said that, there's so many of us that won't take a break because we're just so busy trying to achieve. I mean, I've always said, and I didn't think of this, someone else, probably some other smart woman, said that we have to work twice as hard to be half as good as the men. So we feel that we can't take those breaks because if we do take the break, then we lose ground.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes that may be true. But what I'm going to say is that um, a lot of the times it's not. You don't lose as much ground as you think. And we don't have to be that martyr that can hold everyone together. Something that I did learn in the army, which is, it's fairly cold. It's like they don't care. Um, Although we think that we can't be replaced, we can. And although we'll say in business, no one can replace me, no, they can't replace you, but they can get something like you. And they won't be as good as you, but you burning yourself out to try to prove yourself that you're valuable and all that sort of stuff, it's either going to, like, you take the break, or like what happened with me with depression, the break will make you take it. So I had a mentor years ago said that the universe will give you signs. It will give you a feather, a brick, or a truck. When I look back with 2020 hindsight, look back in the retrospectoscope, it's always 2020 vision. I can see the feather, I can see the brick, I can see the truck, and I can see when I ignored all of them. But then it was like this great big freight train that ran me over. And there is no escaping a freight train. There I was, like, basically splattered on the tracks, just like naked, raw, real. And that's when I went, oh, maybe I'd better do something now. And it's like nowadays what I do, because I've learned, from my own experience and other people's experience around me, is that now I look for the feathers because they are far easier to deal with. And it's like, okay, time out, time out. Let's have a little break and let's breathe. Remember to breathe. Let's do something for me. Okay, good. You do not want to wait for the brick, the truck, or even the freight train, and take it from someone who knows the freight train takes a lot to recover from. Not impossible, just a lot harder.
Yeah, and I think as leaders, we also have to lead by example, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was, being raised, quote unquote, up the corporate ladder, in my 20s, I was taught you're the first in, you're the first out. You show up, you lead by example, which is totally true. But the problem with that is, in growing my own company later, I was like, I have to be first in and first out. Excuse me, first in and last out, right? I need to
Yeah.
be able to be the one who's there taking the most meetings and having the most effort, because if I'm not doing it, then how are other people going to do it? That was this mental state I
Mm-hmm.
was in. And what it ended up doing was burning me out. I burnt out. And here I am telling my team to go take breaks so they don't burn out. And here I am burning out over and over again. So what I ended up noticing was that a lot of my team wouldn't take breaks because they didn't want to let me down.
Yep.
And so when I started taking breaks because I was forced to, I started shifting my mindset into part of me leading by example is actually showing how to have a healthy lifestyle too, and how to find that
Yes.
balance and how to prioritize my health and my well being and my mental state. And I started to be okay with and encourage the breaks for myself in addition to my team so that they felt like they could do it and have the permission guilt free to go take care of themselves too, because I was showing them, yes, go do this and take care of you, you're important too, and it made a big
Yeah.
difference.
It is a big difference because and there's something that, like, a lot of women get they get caught up in the very masculine way of leadership. And, like, I'll hear even the males say, leaders have to lead from the front. No, they don't. You don't see the generals in modern warfare out on the field with the privates and the soldiers. And in fact, if they are actually there, they they're often the ones that get shot first because they don't have the field craft. The thing is that in the military, in business and that, you actually hire people because they actually have a skill to do it. And if you're a leader leading from the front, then you're actually in their way.
Right.
You're not actually letting them do their work. So that's a very masculine, very ego thing. Women, we nurture. When I was in the military, like as a major, I was actually, I was so different to my male colleagues. And they'd say to me, how do you get so much out of your soldiers? I say, I give a shit about them. I'm nurturing them. I would have private soldiers transferred to my division, and it was like, oh, they're an oxygen thief, Pauline. Just the best they can do is just get discharged. They have reached their ceiling rank as a private, and I go, surely not. So then I'd interview them, care about them, give them a bit of TLC, but firm TLC because I'm in the military after all. You still have the structure to follow. But then later on, I find after I get discharged, I find out that some of these soldiers have gone to war. They got the conspicuous awards because they were so fantastic under fire, and then they get to the top of their rank structure. And to this day, and they do not have to do this, but on Facebook they still call me ma'am, which is like how we do it in the Commonwealth, but they call me ma'am, which is a compliment because most soldiers hate officers, but yet these guys still either call me ma'am or boss. And so that shows me that by embracing the way that women, the way we are leaders and the way that we should, just need to show up, not should. And by the way, that's another thing you get rid of to get rid of depression and everything in life. Get rid of the word should out of your vocabulary, because when you should all over the place, it gets very messy. That's just it's a self-judgment thing. Just get rid of it. So yeah, these guys, because I actually embraced my the way that I felt that I needed to be a leader, and yeah, lead by example, but also allow these people to show up and use their skills that they've been hired for. It's leadership doesn't, and when you do it that way, it doesn't even have to be hard. The guys make it look harder than it is because I'm just going to say, because I think we're in a safe space, I don't think some of the male leaders are good leaders. They're just leaders of convenience, not competence.
Well, to your point, if you're hiring the best people and you trust them to do their jobs, which again, if they're the best people, they will, and they'll blow it out of the water, it's best to just
Exactly.
empower them, give them a direction to run, and then get out of their way so they can
Yep.
go work their magic too.
Exactly right.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. Well, I appreciate your amazing story, your honesty, your vulnerability, all of your tips. Thank you for sharing with us today, Pauline. Final words of advice for anybody listening today. What would you kind of leave them with, whether they're an entrepreneur, or they're dealing with mental health, or they're just trying to grow their businesses? What do you want to leave people with?
There's so many, but I think just be your best self, be you. You can model other people, but always come back to you. Like what I do with my copywriting, my mentees that I've got, my students, I always say, um, in business, in life, everything. Imagine that your DNA, and you're just taking the best out of life and adding to your chromosomes, and then that goes into your DNA. So I've got all these copy chromosomes, business chromosomes come into the DNA of me that's makes me an individual. That way I don't have to try to be, the next whoever, choose a name. I can be the first one of me, which is all I actually was born to be.
And I think as humans, we're all on a mission to just become the best versions of ourselves, right?
Yes.
I think it's
Yeah.
important and good to look at what's working for others and see what resonates
Yes.
well with you. But to your point, Pauline, you are one of one.
Yes.
So do everything you can to become the best version of yourself. And that's where you can find joy, and that's where you can find fulfillment, and that's where you find passion. And that's when people follow you.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you too, Pauline. If anybody wants to reach out to you and be in touch, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Just through my website, thecopyalchemist.com, and that's it.
Amazing. You're the best. Thanks for
Thank
listening in,
you.
everybody, and have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening to the For Female Founders podcast series. If you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe, like, or comment below so we can continue to support women in business by helping them thrive, not just survive. We'll see you on the next show.